Welcome to the Golden Seams podcast. I'm Gabe, and along with my co-host Michae, we're thrilled to have you join us on this transformative journey of self-discovery and personal growth. Our podcast is all about helping you uncover your authentic self, find your true calling, and create prosperity in alignment with your deepest values and aspirations.
As you know, we're continuing to go deep into the theme of boundaries, a crucial aspect of living authentically and pursuing your true path. We're exploring Melissa Urban's insightful book, The Book of Boundaries, Set the Limits That Will Set You Free. Chapter 9, Handle with Care, Setting Boundaries Around Sensitive Subjects. Yes, you can and should set boundaries around your grief and your health status and your divorce, relationship status, sex life, family planning, identity, religious convictions, trauma, and anything else that other people attempt to insert themselves into, well-meaning or otherwise. This chapter is all about navigating boundaries around difficult subjects. These boundary violations can happen anywhere. The people who seem to have a unique ability to touch our most sensitive buttons and to make us deeply uncomfortable, all of this is being covered in this chapter on boundaries. That quote was from Melissa Urban, the author of the Book of Boundaries, Set the Limits That Will Set You Free. Gabe and I are going to be covering Melissa's list of general areas of inquiry that are best to avoid without invitation. We're going to be talking about the ring theory and understanding your role in any crisis in regard to boundaries and respecting others' boundaries. Boundaries as a tool for teaching and how it can help others, and why Melissa says it's not your responsibility or obligation to educate while you do set a boundary. We'll be discussing impact versus intention and the three main categories of sensitive subjects that Melissa has laid out, including mental and physical health, public encounters, and life stages. We'll be talking about Melissa's prep tips and her huge prep tip of not comforting the hurt party you've had to set a boundary with or telling them it's okay, and why it's okay for someone to feel bad when they do harm. Melissa's great lines from her scripts that Gabe and I found immediately helpful, and getting help with your blind spots. We'll also be talking about pronoun etiquette, which is so beneficial in respecting one another, remembering always we get back what we give out in return, and gentle kindness as often as we can. Melissa's great response to the potentially loaded, "Can I ask you a personal question?" and her bystander intervention guide.
Melissa begins by outlining some general areas of inquiry that are best to avoid without an invitation. Children. Do you have any kids? Do you want kids? Can you have kids? How many kids do you have? Will you have more kids? Relationship status. Why are you single? Do you have a boyfriend? Assumptive on many levels. When are you two getting married? What's your age difference? Health or ability? Have you lost weight? Have you tried X treatment for your condition? What happened to you? What's your disability? Can you still insert activity? And recovery. Do you miss alcohol, drugs, or gambling? What was your rock bottom? Tell me your wildest story. Do you think you'll ever go back to it?
Melissa shares with us, not only can questions about sensitive subjects unknowingly cause harm, but unsolicited stories can also upset or trigger others. And she says this is not helpful.
Melissa reminds us to be kind. The point of this chapter is twofold. First, I want to help those who are dealing with challenging seasons or situations learn where and how to set boundaries to keep themselves safe and healthy. Second, through these examples, I hope to point out that some things you say or ask may be more problematic than you realize. When we know better, we do better. And after reading this chapter, hopefully you'll think twice about sharing some of these questions or stories uninvited. You never know what people are struggling with, and I'm assuming that the last thing you want is to add to anyone's stress during an already difficult time, even if they are a total stranger.
When I read this part, I thought, be kind, don't share, don't ask. The more I read in this chapter, the more I went, I'm a total violator.
Me too.
This chapter makes you really aware. Melissa introduces us to a woman named Heather whose father had passed away, and he had a tremendous circle of friends. It became overwhelming for her and her family, with everyone continuously and constantly asking about their grief, offering their condolences. Then when she did try to lay a boundary, people acted like she'd had enough space, gave her a little space, and then decided to jump in, and she really needed some help because her and her family needed this time. Melissa offers the ring theory, which is, as she puts it, the ring theory was first developed in 2013 by psychologist Susan Silk and her friend Barry Goldman. It helps people understand what to do in times of crisis. Picture a small circle with a number of concentric circles around it. If the crisis is happening to you, you're in the very center circle. The farther away you are from the center of the crisis, the farther out you sit in the rings. In the case of Heather's passing, her mother and her siblings are in the center of the ring, as they are the most closely affected. Other family members, like Heather's husband, her aunts and uncles, and her father's closest friends, would sit in the next concentric circle. Other friends and co-workers might sit in the next circle out, and casual acquaintances would sit in the outermost circle.
Melissa continues, in Silk and Goldman's ring theory, grief, or complaints, anger, frustration, or as Silk calls it, betching, flows out from the center of the ring, whereas comfort, and only comfort, flows back in towards the center. That means that Heather can do or say anything she needs to process her grief, whether that's accepting comfort or support from those in outer rings, sharing her anger or frustration with them, or simply closing them out because that's what she needs as the person in the smaller circle. Those in the larger rings outside of Heather's should not expect or demand that she help them process their feelings. They shouldn't share unsolicited memories, offer advice, express despair, or center themselves in any way to anyone closer to the crisis than they are. They can only express those feelings to the members of the circles farther out than their own. Grief flows out, comfort flows in. This doesn't just apply to grief. This theory can be applied to any crisis, whether that's death, trauma, illness, injury, miscarriage, or divorce, all subjects. When I was reading through this part of the chapter, it reminded me of when I was growing up. My family lost two members pretty young. They were both my cousins, and it happened about a year apart. They both passed away for different reasons. And I remember feeling super conflicted because I think I was visibly affected by the situation and their passing, and it was an overwhelming level of influence that it had on me. People around me, well-intended, were trying to bring up conversations and understand better, but I think I was just too raw from the wound being so fresh and intense and overwhelming for me to process at that age, that I couldn't remove myself from the realm of polite obligation to participate. And I remember how much it felt just like picking scabs when something was trying to heal, and it was really uncomfortable, and this ring theory actually makes a lot of sense to me.
Gabe, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Thank you, Michae.
Melissa talks about understanding your role in any crisis. She says the second reason that she's sharing the ring theory here is so that we can understand our roles in any crisis. That will make you more comfortable setting the boundaries you need to keep yourself safe and healthy, and should help you to be more understanding when someone in the center of the ring sets a boundary when you're in an outer circle. She says one of the biggest benefits of becoming comfortable setting boundaries is that you'll be better at recognizing when one is being set with you, and have the tools and perspective to respect that boundary with more grace and understanding. I find that to be so completely true from the first time I read this book. It really amplified my awareness in the places that I didn't even recognize other people's boundaries, to a point where I really began to become aware. I felt so grateful for that. It was just a matter of how I was socialized, different situations. I just always wanted to be respectful of other people.
It's incredible how certain experiences can sensitize and awaken new parts of the brain and perceptions. Sometimes painfully, but it really seems to turn on new sensors and new awarenesses if we live through stuff.
So true.
And it's hard to imagine what we haven't lived through that other people might be living through. It's been really helpful. Melissa goes on, using boundaries as a tool for teaching. Nearly every boundary conversation I include in this chapter offers the person setting the boundary the opportunity to educate their conversation partner about why their query, comment, or advice was harmful, regardless of that person's intention. Explaining why certain questions and comments can be painful, triggering, or more invasive than intended goes a long way in diffusing their line of inquiry or action. Explaining why something is harmful also helps other people change their behavior so they don't make anyone else feel uncomfortable in the future. Melissa reminds us that it's not your responsibility or obligation to educate while you set a boundary. There are many reasons why you may not feel like explaining to someone in the moment why their behavior is hurtful to you. Maybe, like Heather, your situation is fresh and painful, and all you can say is please don't. Often, the person who made the faux pas is embarrassed, and educating them further, especially in a public setting, may bring on defensiveness or anger. Maybe you're disabled, trans, or black, and understandably tired of providing free labor to advocate for yourself and your communities. Maybe in the moment, you don't feel like the education will be appreciated or well received, in which case, save your breath, set the boundary, and walk away.
Melissa says the reason we set boundaries is to keep ourselves safe and healthy. Let's talk about impact versus intention. Melissa notes, as we talk about these sensitive subjects, it's important to center impact over intention. Whether someone shared a microaggression, a communication that contains harmful bias or connotation, asked an insensitive but well-meaning question, when are you two going to have babies? Or made a harmful assumption, like telling someone they're in the wrong bathroom, the focus of these boundary statements is to point out the impact of that person's actions and not to get stuck in their intentions. Think of it like this. If I accidentally rear-end you with my car, my intention was good. I didn't mean to run into you. But I still hit your car, and that action has a clear and definite impact on your health, safety, and property. When you set a boundary in sensitive situations, many people will fall back on their intention. I didn't mean anything by it, and expect a pass. While you can certainly acknowledge their good intentions, the boundary will be most meaningful when you clearly spell out that the impact of their words or actions was harmful, and if you choose, exactly how it was harmful.
I feel like what I've been reading in this chapter makes me think that, or at least imagine, but I think it's more common if somebody wants something, even if it's wanting to help, to get to understand or to know something. I think that there's a sense of entitlement to accomplish the want or the goal that can easily cross somebody's line or boundary or limit in a really good intended situation. I keep imagining the extraction energy, regardless of if it's information. There is, again, a very normalized social energy that people come with wanting something out of an interaction. Connection, information, resource, whatever it is. I do think that that energy can trample over somebody very easily, because life has so many unique experiences lined up for each one of us that I do not think we can assume where somebody's limit is. I'm for sure guilty of doing that. But I'm sitting here and I keep thinking about the ways of what I was trying to get out of the conversation, whether I was conscious of it or not. Even it is information to help, but then that's again making it about me.
If someone crosses a line with me because I'm not opening myself up to that, I would say something like, why do you ask? But I really do feel going past that, I would say probably to the person, you're being entirely too familiar with me.
Yeah, maybe another thing that can sneak it in, Trojan horse effect of the environment. It has this casual atmosphere with a certain intonation. Anything can be disguised in that field.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder how much that also has to do with our presence and awareness in certain conversation settings or situations that we find ourselves in.
Thank you for continuing this journey into boundaries and self-discovery with us.
With the Golden Seams, you're not just listening to a podcast, you're embarking on a path to inner harmony, personal empowerment, and authentic prosperity. Don't miss out on this opportunity to revolutionize your approach to boundaries, self-care, and living your true purpose. Subscribe to our Patreon today and start your journey towards a more balanced, fulfilling life that's truly aligned with your authentic self.
Melissa's three main categories of sensitive subjects are mental and physical health, public encounters, and life stages.
Melissa describes mental and physical health. These are boundaries you'll set to preserve your mental health, protect your privacy, and ensure that conversations don't head in a direction that would trigger pain, anxiety, or unpleasant memories. Public encounters. In a public setting. In these situations, you feel the need to set a boundary around inquiries or statements that could be offensive to you or others present. Boundaries are often set with people we'll never see again. Still, they're critical. These are the boundaries we set around the casually racist statement a stranger makes at a party, an uncomfortable personal question asked of you by a shop clerk, or the handsy uncle you meet at your friend's wedding. You set these boundaries not because you value your relationship with those people, but because sticking up for yourself and what's right is important to you. In life stages. These are the questions people often pose innocently, but which have the potential to be quite painful. They encompass your relationship status and progression, education and career path, pregnancy and family planning, and coping with death and divorce.
Let's talk about Melissa's prep tips. Her first one, protect yourself first. She says, I know you care about other people's feelings and that compassion is admirable, but nobody's feelings are worth sacrificing your own health and safety. You have enough on your plate, and if people don't understand or if they react poorly to you setting a limit, that is very much not your problem. Why is that person's needs more important than your own?
Right. And the can of worms that comes up when you start questioning self-worth and where you're at and where you want to be, at least for me. This idea of protecting yourself first really reminds me of the airplane safety guide when you go on a flight and they tell you to put your oxygen mask on first. Both of these are very foreign to me. Not because I disagree with them, but I think out of habit and conditioning, I have not this as my baseline, quite a bit of people pleasing to overcome and coming to terms with how much more good I can bring into any relationship or situation when I'm at my best. Because then I can contribute my whole self and not be in a state of reaction or obligation.
Next, Melissa says, automate your boundaries. If you know you'll be facing insensitive questions or an influx of attention, automate your boundaries as much as possible. I like how she shares this because you have to involve others to help. It's better sometimes to hear the boundary from somebody else.
I agree. I don't want anybody touching my baby bumps.
She says, be an effective boundary proxy. In this case, this is if someone close to you or in your life has a situation that is difficult, life-changing, or if they need help with setting boundaries. Melissa says, talk with them about what information they're comfortable sharing and with whom that will allow you to hold the boundaries that they wish to set or set them yourself as their proxy. Even if you have other opinions, know that by being an effective advocate, you're taking the burden off of your loved one and demonstrating that they can trust you to keep them safe and healthy. This is also a really big deal when you're a boss or you're managing people or you're over a team or even sometimes in a family. I think it's really helpful to be the advocate because it takes the heat off of that person, but also gives them the space that they need to get through the situation that they're in and possibly to even heal. A very kind and sensitive thing to be and to do.
I can see this fitting in really well with the ring theory and almost
Yes.
imagining your proxies being set in different ways by how close somebody is or gets. You can automate it really well if you have a developed ring around you.
Yes. Melissa says, educate wisely. When in doubt, simply state your boundary and change the subject or walk away. Her good go-to here that she offers is, I'd rather not talk about it. And then she tells us to practice, practice, practice. She used to get flustered when people would ask her invasive questions about her history or use. She found herself, which I could really empathize with, getting mad, or she'd answer their questions automatically and then get mad at herself for oversharing. Oh my gosh, I've done this so much. She says, if you're in a season where you know you'll be in these types of situations, write down a few scripts of your own or borrow what she's offering and practice them out loud until responding in this way feels comfortable and grounded. I really agree with that. Scripts or just practicing what I'm going to say, practicing the no thank you. Gabe and I throw it back and forth at each other all the time now. It is so much easier because we've practiced it. I feel like this is really helpful.
I agree. I really love Melissa's suggestions to do homework around our boundaries. I think that that's so productive and has been helping me a lot in preparing. And it's actually just doing this with the audios and the mandala has already neutralized a great deal of my anxiety in public situations where normally I would experience boundary crossing. But I feel like the scripts identifying green, yellow, red have actually done a huge amount of work already. And I could see it translating into my ability to set the boundaries well.
She also says, be prepared for their feel-bads. I think that this is tremendously helpful. Melissa says, once someone understands how their well-intentioned question was actually harmful, they may now expect you, the hurt party, to comfort them because they feel so bad. She says, you don't have to do this. In fact, trying to fix their discomfort only gets in the way of their growth and may rob them of an important life lesson. She says it's not clear or kind to pretend what they did wasn't hurtful, to say it's okay if it wasn't, or to dismiss the impact by saying, I know you meant well. They can mean well and still cause harm. You can acknowledge that, accept their apology, and move on. And she says it's okay for people to feel bad when they do something that causes harm.
I keep thinking of, I forget who it is, this quote, something along the lines of, help sometimes can look like a monkey trying to save a fish from drowning. Going back again to the idea that if we're measuring our response based on intentions, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Setting boundaries around your mental and physical health. Melissa's scripts will help you work through the challenges you are facing with less risk of feeling triggered, having your privacy violated, or having your identity questioned. It's up to you to determine your own comfort levels here. She also shares, if possible, work with your therapist or counselor on specific boundaries that might be helpful to set so that you're prepared when the need arises. A professional might be able to help you identify situations that you hadn't even noticed were draining or triggering you.
As much as I love all the planning and homework, one thing that I'm realizing is we don't know when we're going to need a boundary. It is so good to have the muscle exercised and have this fresh on the mind, because it might
So
show
true.
up sooner than we think.
Melissa's first script is discussing a person with a chronic health condition, people constantly giving unsolicited advice. It causes a lot more stress. Melissa offers different scripts here. As always, Gabe and I recommend you get her book because we feel like it's very valuable and a great tool that you might want to have in your library or on your
Yes.
phone. She says in her notes, my first two boundaries here include some form of gratitude because you can assume that the advice people are sharing with you comes from a place of care, frustration at seeing a loved one hurt, and a genuine desire for you to feel better. The red boundary is for folks who don't take the hint, who like to wellness gaslight you by insinuating if you'd only do this one thing, you'd be healed, or who try to sell you their MLM supplement or essential oil as part of their offer of sympathy or their treatment. It's fine to be helpful, but if it doesn't resonate, read the room.
Yes. Other people's struggles is not an invitation to make something about you being right. And that's a pretty violent energy. If somebody's not open to a suggestion implying that they would be better with it, I think is unbelievably offensive.
Melissa gives fantastic boundaries here,
Right.
such as, thanks, but I'm not looking for advice outside of my own healthcare team right now. Melissa gives this great script here, and she says, someone wrote into her and said, I'm often misgendered in public, from cashiers calling me sir to coworkers or acquaintances struggling to, quote, remember that I use they, them pronouns. I'm never quite sure how to handle it respectfully but firmly. Can you help? Melissa's green. Oh, I'm not a sir or a ma'am. I use they, them pronouns. Her yellow. I use they, them pronouns. Please remember that when you're talking to me. Her red. You continue to misgender me and it's starting to feel deliberate. That's disrespectful and unkind, and if it continues, I'll shop elsewhere, I'll speak to HR, or I'm going to leave. Melissa says, you may need to remind people several times of your pronouns and identity, especially if they're used to thinking of you in different terms. Only you know when it's appropriate to escalate from a green response to a yellow or a red one. You also may decide it's not worth correcting the cashier at Target that you'll never see again, or you may choose not to correct them for your own safety. Only you know where and when you need to set a limit. I feel like this is where we all need to be respectful and aware. I know of a situation in a workplace where someone's pronouns were not being respected. The other employees pulled the individual aside and advocated for that person privately and just said, that's not cool. You need to be more aware. The person reasoned, as we're talking about intentions versus impact, I just don't know how to use those. So we're going to talk about how to use them because Melissa gives a great guide here.
Yes.
But you can Google anything, so I just want to throw that out there. We're going to talk about pronoun etiquette. Melissa shares that she asked queer educator and activist Josh Jenkins, they, them, he, him, to help share the basics on pronoun etiquette. Here are a few things to remember so folks don't have to set these boundaries with you. Never assume gender based on how someone looks. In fact, never assume gender, period. Avoid gendered terms like sir, ma'am, or ladies and gentlemen when addressing people or groups. When talking to a group, you could use a number of gender-neutral terms like hi y'all, welcome everyone, hello party people, or good morning Miami, or just hello, in my opinion.
If you're referring to a stranger, don't guess their gender. Instead, use a descriptive term, their occupation, or their name. This sounds like, can you hand that to the cashier? Or, oh, that's Brooks. Brooks came with Christine. When introducing yourself, volunteer your own pronouns. You can also ask, do you want to share your pronouns? But please don't insist that someone share, as it might mean outing themselves in a space, time, or environment which they're not comfortable or feeling safe.
Added side note here, someone shared with me from the LGBTQ community to add my pronouns to my email signature and to also use them on my Zoom and other places, just to let LGBTQ people know I am accepting and aware. And I think that this is a respectful way to sort of set a precedence, especially in a rather challenging time that we are all facing, not just within the United States, but throughout the world. My private opinion on this is that if we don't help each other, we weaken ourselves. Continuing on with Melissa's list, alternate with multiple pronouns. If someone uses multiple pronouns like they, she, it's generally best to use both when you refer to them. This is my friend Kim. They are an artist. Her work is so vibrant. You can also ask them, do you want me to use one pronoun more than the other? Be considerate of pronoun changes. When someone shares with you that they are going by new pronouns, thank them for telling you and start using them immediately with one caveat. Ask if there are any spaces or people where you shouldn't use those pronouns in order to avoid outing someone, especially if this is a recent change.
If you use the wrong pronoun, quickly correct yourself. Jamie has the best style. They, have a great Instagram feed. Don't follow it up with a lengthy apology. That forces the person harmed to expend energy reassuring you and could drag out an already uncomfortable situation. And finally, make the damn effort. If you can remember Mary at the office's new last name when she got married, or the pronouns for your neighbor's labradoodle, you can wrap your head around this pronoun change too.
Woot woot!
Woot! Thank you for joining us on the Golden Seams podcast. We're truly grateful for your presence and participation in this journey of self-discovery and personal growth. Remember, your path to authenticity and prosperity is unique, and we're honored to be a part of it. If you found value in today's episode, we invite you to like, subscribe, and share it with others who might benefit. Until next time, keep exploring, keep growing, and keep shining your authentic light. This is Gabe and Michae signing off from the Golden Seams. May your path be golden, and may you find the strength to mend and beautify the broken parts of your life, just like the art of Kintsugi. Take care, and we'll see you in our next episode.